All right, hello, welcome. My name is Shaina. I'm an astrologer, and today we are continuing my little series about interceptions in astrology. So today we are talking about Gemini Sagittarius interception as well as 3rd and 9th house interceptions. So just to reiterate, I have a whole video about what interceptions are and how to find them. If you're a little bit confused about what I'm talking about, or if you're not 100% sure of your interception, I'll link the playlist, my interception series playlist, up in the cards right here. Also, if you have any other interception besides this one, definitely check out that playlist. I might have not made the video yet about your interception, but I promise I will. So if it's not in that playlist, it will be coming, but definitely check that out as well. And this video is also part of a bigger series called my, Learn Astrology, free Learn Astrology course, right? I have quite a few videos up in that series now. So if you want to learn astrology and you're really confused, I start all the way from the very beginning, okay? So I will also link that playlist up in the cards as well. Before I get any further into the video, let me get some advertising out of the way. So I sell birth chart readings, full-length birth chart readings on my website, shainaemily.com. Thank you to everybody who's purchased a reading so far. It means so much to me to get to connect to you guys. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, I have birth chart readings, synastry readings, transit readings, tarot readings, a bunch of stuff up on my website. And then I also have an astrology TikTok, which is at shaina.emily. I do more short form, quippy content over there. And I also do lives every Monday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time if you want to hang out and chat with me. I think my voice cracked there and I could do it again, but moving forward. So I have been doing this slightly diabolical thing of ranking the interceptions based off of how hard I think they are to have. I mentioned this in the previous video. I just think interceptions are hard no matter what. Like if you have one, I think it's one of the hardest things to deal with within astrology, especially if you have a bunch of intercepted planets. I think having an interception with a bunch of intercepted personal planets is one of the hardest things to bestow upon a birth chart, in my opinion, other than a fixed grand cross. Both are kind of fighting it out to me in my mind of what are the hardest, fixed grand cross or every personal planet intercepted and they're out of battle, you know what I mean? Just because if you have an interception later in the list doesn't mean it's still not hard, because it is, but I do think some are harder than others. Sue me. What can I say? I think ranking is fun. So we have Aries Libra interception at number 1, because I do stand by the fact that I think it's the hardest. Taurus Scorpio interception at number 5. And then I decided to put Gemini Sagittarius interception at number 4. So near the middle. I do think this one sucks, but sucking is not the same as it being detrimental and extraordinarily hard. It just sucks, and it's kind of the definition of no fun. If you want to have no fun, have this interception. You know what I mean? And so that sucks, but it's not hard and arduous I think that, Aries Libra can be sometimes, but it's just shitty, so that's why I put it at number 4. But yeah, so that perfectly segues. Let's just get started about talking about Gemini Sagittarius interception. So not having these in your chart is basically kind of like not having any fun. Gemini Sagittarius are really the fun, free energies where you try things, you do new things, you go here, travel there, try this, try that. And so not having them kind of makes those things inaccessible. So in short, Gemini Sagittarius is just somebody that struggles to have fun and let loose and enjoy themselves. And yeah, that sucks. It sucks. But let's first talk about the Gemini side of the interception. So Gemini's ruling planet is Mercury. So with a Gemini interception, you feel that you don't have a voice, or you feel that you do have a voice, but for some reason that voice was taken away from you. Maybe when you were growing up, you weren't allowed to ask questions. You weren't allowed to be that curious child, because that's what Gemini rules, that curious, inquisitive child. You felt like you weren't allowed to ask, well, why? Why this? Why that? Why is the sky blue? Why is the night dark? Why do we pray to Jesus, for example? Big why questions are something that your parents maybe pushed down or didn't allow you to ask. So something that I will point out is that I have noticed that this interception shows up the most in my observations in people with the Libra rising. I tend to see this interception to be very common. And so it tends to wind up happening in the 3rd and 9th house. And I do find this is a big indicator indicator of somebody that grew up very religious, especially because having an intercepted Gemini is not being allowed to ask questions. Instead of asking questions, you're told just have faith. You're told just believe what I'm telling you. And that's very Libra. Yes, just accept what I'm telling you. Don't question it. Don't upset the balance. You know, the balance is that we're all Christians, or I'm just using that as an example. You know, the balance is that we're all Christians. We accept Jesus. We accept the faith. So don't start asking these weird questions that make us uncomfortable. You know, let's intercept your Gemini and just accept everything that we say at face value. Can a lot of times be the theme with the Gemini Sagittarius interception. If you weren't raised religious but you have this interception, you might have been told, instead of the just have faith thing, you might have been told, well, you have to listen to me because I'm an adult. You know what I mean? I'm your mom or I'm your dad, so you have to take what I say at face value. It might have been a little bit of that kind of indoctrination. Why do I have to eat my vegetables? Instead of your parents sitting you down and saying, let me explain the concept of health to you and like longevity in life, they just said, because I'm an adult and I say so. So I think it can really rob you of getting these really valid explanations for why humans do things. You know, why we do this or why we do that. It felt like you weren't allowed to ask and you just kind of had to take it, which is very unfair. I've always been meaning to preface this. If you have planets in the signs that I'm talking about with the interception, that means that you had the want to do this stuff. Like for an example, you had the want to ask questions. You asked questions all the time. You were always going, why do we pray to Jesus? Why do I have to eat my vegetables? But it was pushed down. It said, don't ask that. You're not allowed to ask that, or you weren't given an answer, or it felt like, oh my God, you're not allowed to be inquisitive. This curiosity is really pushed down in me. Okay, so basically whenever you have planets in the signs of the interception, you were really trying to get to these things. You're really trying to ask. You were really wanting these things, but they were kind of like taken from you or not allowed from you or intercepted from you, some might say. I am kind of bringing in the more, I guess, stereotypical, you know, rising signs that people have, I've noticed with these interceptions, just because I'm hoping that it applies to more people, and just because it's something I've seen repetitively that I kind of know these patterns a little bit better now. But let's take Libra rising again. So I also think a big theme with having this interception is not being allowed to be a child, to be a fun, carefree child. And so it makes sense that a lot of Libra risings would have this interception because they have Capricorn ruling the 4th house. So they had to grow up very quickly in their home. Maybe they were even a little bit parentified in their home, which there are major themes that you'll hear throughout this interception description of being parentified, even if you aren't a Libra rising, even if you don't have Capricorn ruling your 4th house. There are still themes of this, but I feel like that Libra rising makes sense with that 4th house Capricorn because it reiterates that. There's just a big theme of not being able to be this like super carefree, fun, curious child. Like, this is more on the Sagittarius interception lens, but because it's being brought up, I want to use this as an example because I'm thinking of it now. Anyways, like this is definitely the child that they would see everybody else in their classroom, especially if you don't have any energies in these signs. You know, an example would be you guys are all on the playground and everybody's like, yeah, let's all get up on the playground and jump off the highest part and let's all do this. You know, everybody would be like, yeah, but your Gemini Sagittarius interception goes, oh my God, what if I fall? What if I hurt myself? What if something happens to me? I can't do that. I'm scared. Or let's say you have planets in Sagittarius or Gemini and you go, oh, I want to do this. I want to do this. And your mom goes, you're not doing that. Or your dad goes, hell no, I'm taking you away from these friends. That's not happening. You think my dad will kill me if I jump off the top of the playground, you know? So even though I'm like sitting there like, oh, I love to jump off, you know, you're not allowed to for some reason. It might have even been the rhetoric of like, your parents might have said that thing of like, well, if everybody jumps off a cliff, would you? You know, that might have been kind of the rhetoric. And you may be thinking, if you have Gemini Sagittarius planets, well, if it's fun, I might, you know? Anyways, but this can definitely be somebody with a stunted childhood, and that kind of adds to that whole parentification thing that I said. It doesn't always mean that you're going to be parentified, but I wonder if there are themes that come into it because you weren't allowed to have fun and be free and make these very reckless decisions, even at a young age where you should be getting hurt. Like, let's be honest. I mean, I guess in my opinion, as a Venus in Sagittarius, you're a little kid. When you're a little kid, your whole point of life is to get hurt and get back up. You know what I mean? But you might have felt like your parents didn't want you to do that. They were very paranoid. They were very nervous. They kept you very sheltered. And so they didn't want you to fall down and get back up. They just didn't want you to fall in the first place. So it can make it so you feel like you don't get to do a lot of those little mistakes that a lot of other people get to. This can also be a situation where you struggle to see other people's sides of things. You struggle to see any other perspective other than your own, or the one that was taught to you, or almost kind of the one that was, you know, conditioned into you even potentially. You can struggle to, you know, because it's Gemini. Gemini is all about duplicity and seeing multiple sides and seeing all these different things. With Taurus overtaking that house, it's adding more stubbornness to the way that you think. It's adding less, oh, we'll compromise, or oh, let me put myself in your shoes. It's adding less, oh, let me see things from your side, let me play devil's advocate, let me, you know, whatever it might be. And it's more about, this is my decision, I'm latched onto it, I refuse to change. I have Taurus in this house, so no matter what you say, it won't change my mind. Which again, to me is very religious, you know? That's why I think a lot of people with this interception were raised very religious, especially if you have like double Virgo Pisces. You're definitely, I would assume, or like Pisces energy, I would assume you're definitely raised religious, or maybe 12th house energy, or even 8th house energy, whatever it might be, but moving forward. But with Taurus overtaking that house, you have where there should be, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself in this video quite a bit. I'm definitely channeling a lot of Gemini Sagittarius energy. The last two videos have been very organized going through it, but this video I'm a little bit all over the place, very mutable energy going on here. But with Taurus overtaking that house, where there should be a perspective shifts, Gemini, there is stubbornness, Taurus overtaking that house. I also was speculating, and I wonder with Gemini intercepted if you struggle to multitask, because Gemini is all about doing a bunch of things at once. So you may struggle with doing multiple things at once and putting your heart and soul into each thing. You know, Gemini is that energy that makes us like to watch TV while we're sewing, while simultaneously talking on the phone. Like, that's just all very Gemini activities, talking on the phone, sewing, you know, because it's little things with your hands, watching TV, especially like reality TV. That's all Gemini. That might not be something that you're able to do as much. You may be better at doing one thing at a time and seeing it through till the end instead of having a bunch of projects at once. You may see other people have all these projects up at once and you're like, why would you do that? Why would you spread yourself so thin? Why would you be so distractible? It's best to pay attention to one thing, see it through, and then get it done, and then you're finished. So in that way, I do think that this interception can be better at getting things done. It may struggle to, you know, pick up something new and try something new, but those things that it has committed to, I think it actually has, I think this interception can have better follow through than a lot of other people, because that Taurus Scorpio overruling that house says, I need to get this done, I need to see this to the end, I won't do anything until I get it finished. Whereas Gemini Sagittarius energy can go, squirrel, you know, a little bit while they're doing stuff. I also wonder with an intercepted Gemini energy, if you either didn't have any siblings growing up, this could be an only child energy, or if you did have siblings, especially if you have planets in Gemini or in your third house, if you did have siblings, then you probably have a very strong disconnection to them. You probably, maybe it's an extended family thing where they're not full siblings. Maybe there's a giant age gap where you were parentified and you had to take care of your siblings. Maybe it's just that you didn't live with them growing up. Maybe they're way older than you, and so you didn't get to have that fun sibling relationship. Whatever it is, I think there's a real disconnection to your siblings and a real disconnection to even maybe your extended family as well, potentially. I also think that because Gemini and Sagittarius, I tend to see as energies that are very good at teaching themselves things, especially Gemini energy. Gemini energy a lot of times is self-taught. That's a big theme I've noticed. And so I wonder with Gemini intercepted, if you struggle to teach yourself things, if you need to learn things in more of a class professional setting from somebody that has like mastered that thing, that's the only way maybe you feel comfortable learning about something. Especially with Taurus overtaking that house, you want somebody that's like a sat-in master that can bestow this upon you and teach you, rather than just trying to pick it up yourself and teach yourself, which in that way, okay, this is like getting way, maybe a little bit too specific here, but I feel like that would even make sense with having that Pluto and Sagittarius intercepted that a lot of Gen Zs have. All Gen Zs, if they have a Gemini Sagittarius interception, they have their Pluto intercepted. And I wonder if that adds to the feeling of not having enough autonomy to say, I can teach myself this, I can learn this on my own, I can do this because I said so. You might need that affirmation of somebody else kind of telling you, or a certificate or whatever it may be. You may kind of have some of that imposter imposter syndrome or something along those lines with this interception and that Pluto intercepted. After thinking about it, I wonder if this can also go the other way, because that's kind of interceptions. It's like extremes where you don't have any certification, you don't get to take any classes for your interests, especially if you have planets in Gemini or Sagittarius, but they are intercepted. It's like you have a bunch of interests, but they were never supported. You never got the certification or the classes that you wanted, and so you kind of left out to hung to dry, basically. I also think there is a strong disconnection from people verbally. You may struggle with things like small talk or even being a kiss up to teachers. You may have never had any interest in being a kiss up, or being able to get people on your side by the use of words might be something that's very, very hard to you. You know, Gemini is like the puppet master, so you may feel like you wind up being in somebody else's threads than them being in yours, if that makes sense. Strings, whatever, you know what I'm trying to say. I definitely think this is somebody that struggles with those little conversations. You know, maybe they're somebody that either wants to get really deep or not talk at all or something along those lines. You might even go through phases. You might go through phases in your life where you completely turn away from small talk and want nothing to do with it, or you get really too much into it and you only do small talk and you struggle to get deeper. I also wonder with Gemini intercepted if you feel like a lot of times people would talk over you or ignore you or not listen to the things that you say, not take your intellect or your insights as seriously as it takes other people. You may feel like you're always being interrupted. You know, somebody else is taking the glory. Like, you know, for example, maybe you have an Aries, parent or sibling or something, and you said some joke, and then they would say that joke even louder and get all the credit. That's a very, I would think, Gemini intercepted experience. You may feel like people aren't as interested in your opinions as others, or aren't as interested in your beliefs as others, which is a little bit more Sagittarius intercepted side, but definitely the ideas is the Gemini intercepted side, where you just feel like people don't give you as much space. Like somebody else may be like, hey, I have this idea, let me share it. And everybody goes, oh yeah, let's be quiet and let's listen. Especially if you're a Gen Z with Pluto intercepted, you may feel like whenever you have the same thing, nobody ever listens, nobody ever takes it as seriously. So that can make you be a lot more quiet, become a lot more shy, become a lot more introverted, especially because these two energies are very extroverted, you know, very outer oriented energies. So you may just be a little bit quieter than others. This might have caused some shyness when you were younger, some fear of in class, you know, you weren't maybe the person to raise your hand and answer the question for fear of being wrong. Because maybe growing up, you were always told that you were wrong and incorrect, but in reality, people just weren't seeing things from your perspective. That's another thing. Maybe because your Gemini is intercepted, you feel like your perspective is just so different to other people's, and the way that you think and your views are so far out from anybody else's that there's no point in even bringing them up. You know, sometimes with the Gemini intercepted, it can be somebody that lacks opinions, that just isn't as opinionated as other people and doesn't feel as strongly and as radical about their opinions. It's also very Sagittarius. It doesn't feel as strongly radical about their opinions either. Maybe their opinions are radical, but they don't feel comfortable speaking up for them for fear of being ostracized or something along those lines. And so this can be either somebody who's not as opinionated or has opinions, especially if there's Gemini energy there that's intercepted. You have these opinions, but you feel as though you're not allowed to say them, you're not allowed to discuss them, you're not allowed to share them. This is a great, again, let's just bring religion into it again. I'm not saying you have to be raised religious with this interception, but it's such a, I almost want to say like an easy example to use because it's just so flat out there, you know? It's just like it's doing the work for me. You know, this is definitely somebody that maybe is in a religion growing up and very much indoctrinated into it. Maybe it was a big part of their community, and they may feel that they don't relate to it and they don't get it, but they can't speak up. You know what I mean? You can't speak up. You can't be you don't want to be ostracized even more from the community that you already feel disconnected to because you have a Gemini interception. Your parents won't allow you to speak up for that stuff. Maybe they're extra strict because you have Taurus and Scorpio ruling those houses. So, you know, maybe you won't get fed, or maybe you won't, you know, maybe you'll be stuck in your room all day if you speak up for your opinions. Whatever it is, it's just hard to be able to feel like you have a space where people listen to you as much as they listen to others. You may struggle with details of things, you know, even like like handicrafts or crafts work, you may really struggle with arts and crafts or little small details, or even when you're trying to come to a conclusion, you may struggle to sort out the details and come to a final opinion as easy as other people may. You may struggle to find even details that support your conclusion as well. Or sometimes it can be the other side with Taurus ruling that house, especially if you have no planets in Gemini, of where you don't even feel the need to look it up. You don't even feel the need to research it. You just are like, this is what I've always felt. This is what I've always said. This is what I've always thought. So Taurus energy, I'm sticking by it, even if I don't know if it fully holds up or if it fully holds a candle to the other opinions. This is what I stuck with. This is what I picked. And so this is what I'm standing behind. I think that Gemini Sagittarius energy rules a lot of gray thinking, you know, that gray area in between black and white. And I think with Taurus and Scorpio overtaking those houses, you can have a tendency towards a lot of staunch and strict black and white thinking. Or if you have planets in Gemini or Sagittarius, maybe you were raised with staunch black and white thinking and you just never related to it. But with Taurus and Scorpio overtaking those houses, that can be my way or the highway. That can be my thoughts or no thoughts, my opinion or no opinion. You know, very much it can be just, like I keep saying, very stubborn. You might have also struggled with the social aspect of school, you know, little cliques, you know, maybe you did really well. Like maybe if you, this again, okay, not keep bringing it in, but like if you have a Libra rising, you know, you might do really well with one-on-one relationships, one-on-one conversations, or if you like 7th house energy or other Libra energy or something of that nature, you might do really well with one-on-one conversations, but you might have struggles once it becomes 3 or 4 or 5. You might feel like you don't know what to say, when to interject, when to talk, when to not talk, how to share your opinion, what to talk about, you know, again, how to do small talk, because Gemini rules those small groups, those small clubs, those small communities, not big like 20 plus people. You might do better even with public speaking in that way, but you may struggle with those sort of like, you know, 1 to 3 kind of group oriented aspects of life. And so you might have had trouble finding a little group or a little clique or a little friend group. You might have really struggled with finding that growing up as a kid. Maybe you had really solid friends because you have Libra energy, I'm assuming, with this interception, or at least Libra ruling a house for the most part, unless you have a double interception. But you might have had a lot of friends, you know, but maybe those friends didn't get along, or maybe they were just one friend at school, one friend at dance, one friend at soccer, and they never, you know, overlapped. And so you don't have these little groups to congregate with during recess, if that makes sense. I also was like, I feel like a Gemini Sagittarius interception could totally be that vibe of like somebody that was like an old man from like the age of a baby. Like they just gave that vibe, because Gemini Sagittarius is like the little kid, and it's like the little curious kid, and it's got lots of energy. And with Taurus Scorpio overtaking that house, you may just feel a little bit more serious than others, can also be a theme. A little less playful, a little less childish, as I keep mentioning. So I was like, I could totally see this being like a little curmudgeon little baby, you know, especially if like, maybe if you have Capricorn, a lot of Capricorn energy or extra Scorpio energy or something, I could see that as well. Okay, this is really niche, and I'm gonna say this right now. I'll bet you anything like 99% of people that have this interception don't relate to it. But you know what I was kind of thinking about? I don't know if you remember when those TikToks of this girl and these, like a few people, but I saw one of this girl came out where this girl was like, I just don't have thoughts. Like my head is literally just empty. Like, do people just like think all the time? And I was like, something about that's so Gemini interception. Like, I'm not saying that everybody with a Gemini interception feels that way, because I would expect that they don't, but I could totally see that girl having a Gemini interception that just like doesn't have those constant thoughts and that constant back and forth and that constant inner fighting and this duplicity of people. It's just kind of like Taurus. You know, it's just kind of quiet, just kind of chilling there. Now, I do think that with a Gemini interception, it kind of can jump with every interception, it can jump from one extreme to another. That's kind of the whole thing. So it may go periods of time where you really don't have that many thoughts. Your brain is kind of empty. You know what I mean? It is kind of quiet. There's kind of just a dull hum in there, to this other period of so many thoughts, overthinking, overdoing it, can't sort them, you know, to where it's one extreme or the other, either head empty or nothing but anxiety. You know what I mean? And you struggle to kind of maintain maintain a balance there. Maybe you had no interest in clubs growing up. Maybe you didn't really have any after-school activities that helped you bond with little groups of people. You know, maybe you never had any interest in, especially a big thing I kind of know why I waited to say this because it's more of the Sagittarius interception, but it seems as though I keep on getting ahead of myself in this video, so I'm going to keep on getting ahead of myself in this video. My nose is so itchy. That's so embarrassing. My face is itchy. Why is this happening? But I do find these people to be a lot less political than others, because Gemini Sagittarius is very much that political energy, you know, politics and the social aspect of politics as Gemini, and then that rah, rah, I'm fighting for my beliefs energy is Sagittarius. So I just find that these are people that aren't as passionate within the realm of politics as others, that they're not as politically charged. And they can go through phases where they try it on for size, if that makes sense. Like maybe they're in a very politically charged environment and they, especially if they're a Libra rising, I know I keep on using that, you may be like, oh yeah, I want to try on these political things for size, but it may feel a little bit empty, or it may feel a little bit unsure, or you may feel like you're kind of putting it on rather than it being something that you're very passionate about. Or if you have, again, energies in Gemini or Sagittarius, you may feel as though your political opinions aren't properly represented in politics, and that may be why you don't feel a push towards them, and you don't feel a push to vote or a push to be very outspoken about it, or you don't have a little Gemini Sagittarius community or club to go to that you feel like is your political side, because you feel as though it's not represented. I definitely can see Gemini Sagittarius as the most likely placement for astrology in a birth chart of somebody that wouldn't vote, or somebody that would vote for third party, just because they don't feel as though they resonate or relate to the masses politically. And I will say, as a small anecdote, I do have this interception, unfortunately. I feel like I'm exposing myself when I say this. This is the most vulnerable I've ever gotten with you guys. No, I'm kidding. But I do have in my progress chart a Gemini Sagittarius interception, and it is very sad for me. Yes, I am very sad about it. Am I glad it's not Aries Libra? Absolutely. But am I still sad about the fact that it's Gemini Sagittarius? Yes. Since my energy was intercepted there, which has been for a few years, and it's going to be for another few years, unfortunately, I have not felt politically aligned at all, and I have not voted, and I have not had any interest in it. And I thought that before I had that interception. I thought, I wonder if Gemini Sagittarius intercepted equals not being very politically aligned. And then it was weird because when I got that interception a few years ago, without me trying to consciously do it, obviously, I just naturally stepped away politically and really isolated myself politically, because I feel as though nobody would align with the way that I feel politically, especially because I have a Sagittarius planet, because, you know, I'm Gen Z. I have Sagittarius, well, I guess I'm a zillennial, but as far as Pluto goes, I'm Gen Z. So I have these very passionate political views, but I feel as though they're not properly represented at all, or I just don't like politics. I hate politics, but that's as much as I'm talking about it. It might also be somebody who wasn't raised politically. You know, maybe you were so religious that it was just not the point, or you were raised so religious that, I'm sorry, my shirt's so soft. It's velvet. It feels so nice. That Taurus overruling that house maybe has got me, anyways, I'm sorry, just awkwardly touching myself. Okay, what was I saying? Yeah, not being raised very politically charged, not being raised super heavy into politics, and yes, what I was saying was religion. Maybe religion was so heavily indoctrinated in you that you didn't get to decide politically. You had to purely vote with whichever side the religion that you were raised in goes with, or whatever it may be. That's just an example. And again, with opinions, you may go through periods of not talking much, being very shy and quiet, to periods of oversharing your emotions and talking about them nonstop and doing it too much. Like, especially, like, a good example would be if somebody has Gemini Sagittarius intercepted and no planets in those energies, but then in their progressed chart, they have a progressed Gemini moon. So for that 2.5 years, that would be the time that they're just like doing it too much, being too outspoken, if we want to put the judgment on it, talking too much, having too many opinions, blabbering on about nothing, making really long videos about what interception that lasts like an hour long. Who could be able to do that? I don't know. On a good lens, I think that this could equal a more loyal person. I really do. Because we have Taurus and Scorpio overtaking the shady ass houses that Gemini and Sagittarius were supposed to be in. So instead of having a wandering eye, instead of getting bored, instead of, you know, looking out what else is beyond the horizon, you go, no, I have Taurus Scorpio ruling this house. You know, this is who I'm set on. This is my person. I'm not even looking. I'm not even talking to people. This can be a very intensely monogamous person. And if they're not, it's because they feel that they've missed out on it. And so they're trying to kind of like finally get that sort of, you know, curiosity out. But for the most part, innately, when they're being true to who they are, if they have no planets in there, this is somebody who I would say is very monogamous. Just like how I said, intercepted Taurus Scorpio would be somebody that'd be better at non-monogamy. Somebody with intercepted Gemini Sagittarius would be much better at monogamy, I think, more than most people. And not to bring myself into this, but my first monogamous relationship actually started at the exact time, around-ish the exact time that my Gemini and Sagittarius was intercepted in my chart. And yeah, I've been very monogamous since the relationship started. Yeah, just like very set. Whereas in the past, I never really wanted that. So I definitely think that what I said is just true. But honestly, when I wrote this, I had kind of forgotten that I had a progressed interception. I wasn't thinking about it that way. So I wrote that before I kind of I'm putting this together on camera right now. So I just want you to know that, like, yeah, I just want you to know where it's coming from. But I do think that, like I said, if you have Gemini Sagittarius planets, but those energies intercepted, again, religion, you know, you might have been indoctrinated to have a monogamous relationship, maybe even marry very young. But if you have Gemini planets or Sagittarius planets, you may be kind of dying inside in that relationship. Maybe you got married at like 19 years old, 20 years old because you felt pressured to. Maybe you're Mormon and you felt pressured to get married. And so maybe you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm dying to go out there. I'm dying to see who else is out there. I'm dying to see, you know, what the world has to offer me, but I can't. You know, I promised my parents, I promised my family, I promised my husband or my wife or my partner. And so you feel as though you want to see what else is out there, but you don't want to hurt the other people around you, of course, and you're in this very scorpionic commitment. So you're kind of stuck, I think can also be a theme with this energy. See, I told you interceptions suck. Sorry, guys. Okay. Something I think that a lot of you guys are going to disagree with me on, but I'm going to say it anyways because I stand behind it, is that I think that people with a Gemini interception are really bad at arts and crafts. I tend to find a lot of them wanting to do arts and crafts, but a lot of them tend to be very bad at it. Or little things with your hands. Like you may not be very good at guitar because it's like these very little hand things. Maybe untying necklaces is really hard for you. Drawing, or like my boyfriend does like leather work and he has a Gemini moon. That's like a good example of like that meticulous Gemini energy. Those arts and crafts of that nature may be something that you aren't very good at and you don't have a natural knack for. I was also wondering if this interception, and you guys can let me know because this is purely speculation, gives you bad hand-eye coordination because it's like Gemini. I'm wondering if Gemini has to do with that because it's like hand to eye coordination and your hands are Gemini and that's intercepted. So I don't know. I also think sometimes Gemini Sagittarius interception can either lack a sense of humor, not be very funny, you know, kind of be maybe even a little bit uptight depending on the rest of the energies, or maybe you do know what's funny and you do have a good sense of humor, especially like most Gen Zs have Pluto in Sagittarius, which I do think gives Gen Zs a really good sense of humor, if you ask me. I think they're very funny. But you may know what's funny, but you may not be able to be funny yourself. Might also be like an example of the interception. Like I can, you know, I have a good sense of humor. I laugh at other people's jokes and I like watching comedians and stuff, but I could never do that. I could never be a stand-up comedian. I could never make jokes. I could never tell jokes. But this might not be as funny as other people. Maybe I'm not very funny now. I could see that. Also with Gemini interception, you may feel as though you're not really kept in the loop. Like you don't really know the gossip, the deets of a situation. Okay, you may know people's secrets. Secrets definitely with that Scorpio overruling Sagittarius. But with that Gemini intercepted, you may be out of the loop a little bit. You may be, or even maybe you know all the secrets, but you're not allowed to tell them. You don't have anybody to share them with. You really have to keep quiet about them and you have to refrain from gossip or refrain out of it for some reason. You may struggle with adaptability. Now, if you have, I always like to mention, like if you have doubles that help with your interception. So for example, if you have double Virgo Pisces and a Gemini Sagittarius interception, this helps with what I'm about to say. But if your doubles, because they're both mutable energies, those are the two mutable signs, and so it's really helpful to have that. But if you don't, there's a big chance that you have some struggles adapting to new environments or new people or new situations. You can struggle with the concept of adaptability. You may be raised in an environment that was always kind of the same and steady and one thing, like, again, very religious, like raised within a very religious community, within the same thing, within the same confines. And so you may struggle if you go out to live in the city adapting to that or whatever it might be. Also, Gemini is playing devil's advocate. I kind of mentioned this, but you may feel always obligated to agree with some sort of overarching authority figure, which can also represent like that Scorpio energy overtaking Sagittarius. Like, you can't play devil's advocate and play the other side of things. You just have to agree and concede to this Scorpio-like character. And you can't fight against it because you have Sagittarius intercepted, and so the idea of being that bold can be overwhelming to you. I just think in general with Gemini intercepted, you struggle with trusting your knowledge. You struggle with feeling like you know enough to speak out about things. And it can take a really long time, and you can ruminate on not speaking up for a very, very long time. Or sometimes you can go the opposite way and you can speak on things too quickly without knowing very much about them. Now let's talk about Taurus overtaking the house. So I already did touch on this quite a bit, so I'll try not to repeat myself, but you know I love to repeat myself, so I probably will. So where there needed to be open-mindedness, Gemini, there was closed-mindedness and stubbornness, Taurus. You can wind up staying somewhere or with someone for a very long period of time instead of moving on. Or even you can be stuck on like a thought process, you know, be stuck on like a religious ideal, for example, and know in your heart of hearts it's not something that you resonate with, but be like, well, I picked it, I stuck with it, so I'm sticking by it no matter what. You may wind up staying with one job or one hobby and mastering it, which can be very good. You can be very, very good at that one thing that you do, but you may struggle to kind of move on or branch out or learn new things within that thing or try something new or continue learning. It may just be like, well, I picked, what would be an example? You know, I picked that I was going to be a nurse when I was a kid, so that is the one thing that I'm going to study and the one thing I'm going to do, and I'm not going to learn or do anything else because it's that Taurus energy. And maybe when you're older, you absolutely fucking hate it, but that Taurus energy overtakes that Gemini, so you wind up staying instead of trying something new. Kind of how I said like Taurus Scorpio interception could use to be a little bit more chill. They have no chill. I actually think the opposite, of course, with Gemini Sagittarius interception and Taurus overtaking that house. Like, dude, you have too much chill. You could use to lighten up. You can use to kind of get into something. You know, you can use to be passionate about something. You know, you're kind of like too chill, too calm a little bit, you know? You were given extreme amounts of stability where normal people saw some level of instability. This can be somebody that's very quick to decide and struggles to hear out others. I think this is somebody that sees a lot of loyalty. I think when people come into their life, they rarely go out of their lives. I think that they're more willing to stay there, you know what I mean? Because that Gemini energy can be people coming in and out, that revolving door. So it may be like the friends that you had when you were a little kid or the friends that you continue to have when you're older, which is really good. You know, there's a lot of loyalty and there's a lot of stability and there's a lot of trusting you can be, you know, that you can have with this person. This person can be a very, very trustworthy person, honestly, because they're not going to bullshit you as much as other people are because they don't have Gemini Sagittarius, so they don't know how to bullshit you. You know what I mean? Also, I was thinking that the groups of people that you were raised around might have all come from the same background or the same environment or might look the same or somehow, you know, have the same religious views or whatever it might be, cultural views or whatever it is. I think that with Gemini, we're exposed to a lot of different thought patterns, and with Sagittarius, we're exposed to a lot of different walks of life. So you might have grown up in an environment where everybody kind of looked the same, acted the same. Like, this is totally like Utah Mormon vibes where all those girls look the same and all the guys look the same and they all act the same and they're all raised the same, you know. It's very much giving Gemini Sagittarius interception. In another good way, I think with Taurus overtaking the house, you can be less distractible and you can focus on one thing for a longer amount of time than most people. I just think your focus is a lot stronger and a lot more intense. And if you're wanting to get something done, I think that you actually have a lot more follow through than most people. Obviously, depending on the rest of your energies, but just looking at this interception, that's what I would say. Okay. Sagittarius interception. I think that a big thing with Sagittarius interception is you just can't get away with as much as other people, because Sagittarius is that energy of like, and Gemini, but like using that charm and schmoozing your way out of things and getting away with something because of luck, you know, or like, oh my God, that was close, but I just narrowly got away. You know, with a Sagittarius interception, you may feel like the reins and the fists, I don't know, they come down harder on you. You know, maybe you feel like your family's harder on you than other people. You don't get away with as much. With Scorpio overruling that house, you can feel like there's a lot of control placed onto you where you should have freedom, you know? There's less spontaneity with the Sagittarius interception. Like I said, you're not going to be that kid that jumps off the top of the thing at the playground, right? You can struggle with passion. You can struggle with excitement. Just feeling like, oh my God, I'm waking up and I cannot wait to learn about this or do this or sink my teeth into this. You might feel a little bit less of a zest or a passion or an excitement for life as other people. You may be a little less hopeful. You may be a little bit more pessimistic because you have Scorpio ruling that house. You may be more prone to sadness or depression or fear or paranoia. You know, when you have Scorpio overruling that house, it just kind of gets stuck in that Scorpio energy. You know, it just kind of goes, well, I'm sad, I'm depressed. And with Sagittarius energy, we go, well, you know what? I'm up, I'm awake. We don't know what will come of this day. You know, maybe something will surprise me. Maybe luck will be on my side. And I have hope to get out of this deep despair that Scorpio has me in. Without that Sagittarius hope, you can get really stuck in the despair and the depression and the hopelessness of Scorpio, which I think is really, really, really hard. You can really turn a lot of things down or say no to a lot of things due to paranoia. You know, I always say Sagittarius is the energy of you put something in a Sagittarius's hand, doesn't matter what it is, they'll try it, they'll take it, they'll say, okay, let's, you know, buy the ticket, ride the ride. You know, that's very like Sagittarius energy. With intercepted Sagittarius, if somebody puts something in your hand, you're gonna go, I don't want that. No, what might happen if this? What might happen if that? You know, I don't want to try this, I don't want to try that, I don't want to go here, I don't want to travel here, because what might happen if I travel there? I've never been there before. You know, Taurus, Scorpio overruling the houses. I've never been there, I don't know what it's like. You know, I don't know who's there. I don't know that culture. I would just rather stay in the confines of my own home. It can be very scared. It can be very sheltered. It can be very paranoid, you know? It just feels like you're not as lucky as other people are. Like, you know how in a group of people, if you're doing something risky, there's always that one person that winds up getting hurt. That one person that winds up getting hurt is probably going to be the person with a Sagittarius Gemini interception. This can be an energy that really didn't travel much growing up. Maybe because of finances or whatever it might have been. Well, finances would make sense. It's funny I said that because it's Taurus Scorpio overruling those houses. So it might have been because of finances. You guys didn't travel for whatever reason. You feel like you weren't exposed to the world, exposed to different cultures, exposed to different walks of life, and you can feel like you're really missing out on a lot of knowledge. You do not know what's out there, you know, and maybe you're a little bit scared to find out what is, or maybe you're a little bit pessimistic about it. All that's out there is more garbage. All that's out there is more bullshit. All that's out there is more fucking liars and cheaters and scammers. So what's the fucking point of even exploring? You know, might be kind of the thought with this interception. Again, not very dogmatic with your views, not very passionate about them, because you have Gemini intercepted. Well, you aren't able to gather that information that you need to make an opinion. So of course, if you struggle to gather that information that you need to make an opinion, you struggle to be very dogmatic or opinionated about it because you don't have an opinion to be opinionated about in the first place. This is somebody that's just not very radical, doesn't really shake the boat that much, doesn't really cause too much stirs. Especially, I think this makes sense that I've seen so many Libra risings with this interception, because it's not one to offset balances. You know what I mean? You struggle to be bold and loud and take up space and be excitable. And if you are that way, which a lot of Gen Zs will be that way because they have the Pluto in there, you felt like that was pushed down in you. You felt like that wasn't allowed. You felt like that was looked down upon, or you were shamed for it because it was too much. Again, the politics stuff, but I already touched on that, so let's keep going. This also might be somebody that doesn't really have an interest in higher education or learning. Never was very passionate about school, never very interested in it. It was what it was. I got maybe average grades or whatever it might be. Why is my nose so aggressively itchy. I don't understand. It only is whenever I feel my nose gets itchy. Does anybody know of a spiritual reason? I don't do coke. I haven't done coke in a long time, okay? But I don't know what it is. I feel like it makes it look like I'm like fucking on something and I'm not. It's just itchy. With Sagittarius interception, you might have not gone to college. You might have not had an interest in college or higher education. Your family might have not been able to afford college or a higher education. You might not come from a family that went to college or something, or maybe you're the first. I wouldn't be surprised if you have Sagittarius planets intercepted if you were the first person in your family to go to college or even finish out school. I could see this energy when you were younger being very stuck on a specific religion, political ideal, or thought form. And as you get older, you become a little bit more of a flip-flopper because of that Sagittarius intercepted. You're not stuck on something and passionate about it. And so maybe you overdo that Gemini energy. You become a little bit too flip-floppy that it's kind of like, well, where do your morals even stand? This can be somebody that lacks their own individualized morals and just kind of follows along with others' morals, other people's morals that are given to them and told to them, also very Libra rising. I think also Sagittarius is that confidence in us that goes up to the thing that we want or the person that we want and says, I want this. I want you. You know, Aries is that energy that decides what it is that we want. Leo is that energy that decides that we deserve what we want. But Sagittarius is that energy that confronts it. It's very confrontational energy, Sagittarius, that confronts it and says, I want you, or I want this. And so you may struggle to say, I want this. You may struggle to vocalize it. You may struggle to feel comfortable being autonomous in that. But you may rather be vindictive and jealous of the people that have it because Scorpio overtakes that interception. You may look at people that have what you want or have the person that you want and go, oh my God, I'm so jealous of them. I'm very fixated on them, but you don't actually do anything to go after it. And if you do have a strong opinion about something, you tend to not speak on it out of fear. So like I said, there may be a lot of strictness that you experienced growing up within your family, a lot of very strong rules and strong confines. You might have even felt like you were a little bit in a prison somewhat growing up, you know, and you really have this strong desire to break free and have some freedom from it and get off the very conventional path that you were set on, that you were obligated to go down growing up. And it can be really hard to feel like you're allowed to, or maybe you don't have the tools or the resources to feel like you can break free. This might also be somebody, because again, we always wind up showing our intercepted sign too much eventually. It comes out too aggressively after a while. So this may be somebody that was, you know, on the same path for a long time, whether that be religion, whether that be a relationship, whether that be a career path, whatever that may be. You were on that set path for a long time, and it can feel like out of nowhere and abruptly, you break that path. Like this can even be something as extreme as somebody that was like, I'm going to be abstinent because that's what Jesus wants from me, or that's what my parents require of me, or whatever it is. And then they were abstinent for a long time, and then all of a sudden they're 28 and they've never been married, and they have never, you know, maybe they've been in relationships before, but they always said no. And then it can feel like all of a sudden they would go off and randomly hook up with some random person that means nothing to them out of nowhere and break their abstinence. And on the outside looking in, it's like, why would you break it for something like that and not people that you cared about, or, you know, something along those lines? And it can feel really random, and it can feel a little bit like self-sabotagey as well, because Scorpio rules that house, and it can be very shocking to everybody around you. But it's because it's been brewing in you for so long, you feel like you're going crazy, and so eventually that Sagittarius does come out and you make an impulsive decision. It does not mean you're going to regret it or not. How you feel about it will vary, but I do think that that can happen. You know, I also think that with Sagittarius intercepted, you struggle to find meaning and purpose in life. You struggle to find a direction. You struggle to find something that gets you up in the morning, even sometimes, which is sad. You might not have a big spark towards your interests, or because again, a lot of people watching this video, I assume, are Gen Zs. I know not all of you guys are, but I would assume a lot of you guys are. So a lot of you guys have Pluto in Sagittarius. So you may feel like with Pluto in Sagittarius, like, you know, oh my gosh, I have such an interest. I have so many strong interests. You know, that's what Pluto in Sagittarius is. Like, I'm fucking obsessed with everything I'm obsessed with. I'm dedicated. I'm into it all the way. But with that intercepted Sagittarius, you may feel like you don't have anybody to talk about it with. You don't have anybody that you know that shares that same interest or that same passion, or is as into something as you are into it. Like this can totally be somebody that has like a special interest, you know, but yet that special interest is so niche because it's something like, you know, astrology. No, I'm kidding. Okay. But it's something so niche that you don't have the support around you, Gemini. You don't have the community, Gemini, around you in real life of people that you get to talk about it with. I can't believe it took me this long to say this, but this is somebody that does not like parties. You might just not be a big party person. You might not like these really big gatherings. And you'd probably rather stay home. And it was probably like this from a young age. You're probably that really weird kid that just like didn't like birthday parties, and or maybe you wanted to have a big birthday party, but you didn't know any, you know, Sagittarius planet, but it intercepted, but you didn't know anybody with the Gemini intercepted to have a party with that would show up at the party. So a lot of times this can create somebody that's a lot more antisocial or just isn't that fun or just doesn't like to have that much fun. Like you can even be told growing up that like, this should be fun. This should be for you, but it just never really felt like that or resonated with you. And I also think that that's that Scorpio overtaking the house that says like, that's very paranoid about it all. You know, maybe you would go to birthday parties and see the social complexities, very Scorpio, see these social complexities, see the social hierarchy and the social rules and think, oh, that's nothing that I want anything to do with. I want to stay out of that. That just seems complicated. That seems confusing. That doesn't seem fun at all. And that seems gross and icky, you know? And it's like, how do people not see that stuff and get irked by it or bothered by it or suspicious of it? You know what I mean? So that may be another reason why you don't like these big parties or these big gatherings of people. And also with that Taurus overtaking the Gemini, you might just like a consistent schedule. And with parties, there is a very inconsistent schedule. And so you just might not like it from that way too. Again, why this can sometimes be like a person that's like old when they're young, you know? This is definitely somebody that's not as easily peer pressured as well, which can be very good. This is definitely somebody that is not going to be as easily pushed into something. It's going to take a lot to really push them to do something or try something, which can be very good. Very, very good. I don't think anybody should do something they don't want to do, but sometimes you'll feel like you miss out on a lot of opportunities. You may have a lot of regrets with Sagittarius intercepted. A lot of things that you said no to that you wish you would have said yes to. A lot of things that you feel like you missed out on. A lot of things that you feel like you didn't get to experience, whatever it might be. You're just very fearful of risks. Things need to be sure and set and absolute. You know, you're not going to want to be a guinea pig with this energy of Taurus, Scorpio overtaking those houses. Like, not a gambler. This is somebody that is not a gambler at all. If they are, it's because they have Sagittarius planets that are intercepted and they probably lose a lot. You might get really offended by loud noises, loud music, loud cars, loud people, people being flamboyant, people being boisterous. This is not an energy that's very flashy. This is not an energy that's very adventurous. This is an energy that is not really a big fan of van life or, you know, that kind of, you know, let's wanderer, what's that, like wanderlust sort of energy. That's not like this energy at all. They, especially if you have a lot of Virgo energy and you have a Sagittarius interception, you're going to think, why would I want to travel when my bed is here? Why would I want to go out and try something new or travel and sit on some gross, nasty bed that I don't know how it's cleaned when my clean, soft bed is here in my home? Now, something else that I should point out is that, yes, I've talked about very fervently religious parents, which I think can be a very big theme, but it can also, fervently religious parents can also be fervently unreligious. You know what I mean? Like you could have very atheistic parents or be raised in a very atheistic community or area, whatever it may be, but you might have felt like, especially if you have planets in Sagittarius or Gemini, you might have felt like, oh my gosh, like I want to dig deeper, but I'm not allowed to because my parents would scoff and laugh at me, you know? Oh my God, I want to see what else is out there and I'm very curious, but they don't really give me any sort of ability to go out and see that and stuff like that. Even also, oh my God, if you have planets in Sagittarius, but they're intercepted, I could even see this being somebody that has family from a foreign country or isn't from where they were born or something along those lines. But they weren't exposed to their culture at all. Like this could totally be somebody that was born in Canada, but has a bunch of family that's Puerto Rican. I'm just making it up, you know, but they weren't raised around the family that was Puerto Rican. And so they never got to know the culture. They never got to know their family. They never got to know their roots. They never got to know that kind of Sagittarius, like what they believe in and where their family came from. They never traveled to Puerto Rico. They never went there. They don't know what it's like, but they may be passionately curious about it, but it was intercepted, so they never got to see it or learn it or even learn the language would be a great example. Like being Canadian, but being Puerto Rican, but not knowing the language, you know? As you get older, I could even see this being somebody with a bunch of religious tattoos, or but they're from a bunch of different religions, or they have a bunch of different associations from them, because it's almost kind of like that overdoing Gemini Sagittarius, where you see all, which I think is valid, maybe because I have this interception right now in my progress chart, but like where you kind of see all religions and all spirituality as connected to each other, or different sides of the same coin. And so you can have a bunch of different religious tattoos or a bunch of different religious associations up on your wall, because you see that kind of through line, but you struggle to commit to one and stick with one. Okay, now let's talk about Scorpio overtaking the house. This is somebody that, in a weird way, kind of keeps secrets when things should be shared, which feels so opposite. You know, usually, you know, in our heads we think the opposite, but this is somebody that can be very private and very secretive and not share and be comfortable sharing anything of them, which can be really hard for their friends. This can create extreme cautiousness, extreme nervousness, again, lots of strictness. I feel like for the most part, I've talked a lot about Scorpio overtaking the house, you know, where there should be freedom and fun, there is caution and fear, you know? You might have even been hyper aware and hyper cautious about things from a very young age. You know, you might have extreme amounts of anxiety from a young age, even again, especially for like 6th house or Virgo stuff, maybe. You might have been just always, you know, you just didn't get to like throw your hands up and not give a shit, you know? Where there should be positivity, there is negativity, honestly, you know? Where the glass should be half full, it is half empty. Where there should be excess and enjoyment and indulgence, there is Scorpio, withholding, you know, deprivation. This can be somebody that felt like they didn't have a lot of abundance of things growing up. This could definitely be somebody that was raised poor or hungry or something along that nature. It could even be the fact that if you seek the truth, Sagittarius, you become excommunicated, Scorpio, you know, maybe even like very Amish, right? So it's like life or death here, it's Scorpio. Even struggles to look at the bigger picture, I think, as well, because Sagittarius is like that zoom out energy. Scorpio and Taurus can get stuck on these small little things and can hold grudges very strongly, especially Scorpio. Well, both of them can, let's be honest. Scorpio can hold things so tight, so you might have trouble like holding things loosely and moving on, especially if you have a lot of 8th house energy or Scorpio energy or fixed energy in general of any kind. You can struggle to let things go and move on and move forward with that Sagittarius intercepted and Scorpio overtaking the house. All right, now let's get into, really quickly, let's talk about 3rd house and 9th house interception. So let's start with 3rd house interception. So you might have really felt like disconnected from your siblings growing up, or you were an only child that didn't have any siblings. You just maybe didn't know them, like I mentioned. Maybe you weren't a part of any, you know, real clubs or groups growing up. You didn't really have that kind of small, tightly knit community. You didn't know much about your neighborhood. Maybe you moved a lot, especially if like you have planets in the 3rd house, like Uranus or something, but it's intercepted. Maybe you moved so much in your lifetime that you never really got to know your community or your neighborhood. You didn't get to like travel around or explore much growing up around what's, you know, what's kind of around. I think there's definitely a lack of getting to be a little kid, a curious little kid. This could even be somebody who was homeschooled, because that intercepted 3rd house, you kind of have some kind of a lack of lower education or a disconnection to lower education. So this could be somebody that's homeschooled or has a very small school, or just somehow disconnected to it in general. Maybe you didn't have a very big family growing up, or you didn't know them, you didn't really have a very big extended family. This can be somebody that grows up feeling honestly very alone and a little bit unsupported by the communities around them. You may lack some brain activity. You know, you may not be the most active person mentally. You may not be the biggest multitasker. You may not, you know, spread yourself very thin and try a lot of new things. You may, again, pick one thing and stick with it. I also think this could be a theme of like somebody that doesn't have a car, or somebody that was never taught to drive, or somebody that maybe their family struggled with having a car or driving and you always had to take the bus or something along those lines, or who knows. But just because 3rd house rules like small trips and travels around your community and your environment and your neighborhood, and so you might not have a car to be able to get and travel where you need to go a lot of time, or maybe you don't have a license or whatever it may be, so you don't have that sort of ability to get to just just get up and go wherever you'd like, you know? Difficulty with communication, difficulty with speaking up, difficulty with organizing your thoughts and your mind and your mental processes. Maybe you were made to feel stupid when you were younger, or not as smart as you are, or your intellect wasn't a big focus growing up, potentially. Unless you have like a bunch of Virgo, Mercury, you know, 6th house energy, then obviously that would be different. But definitely things that you said or say were taken the wrong way. Thoughts were very much indoctrinated onto you. What you need to think didn't feel like it could be your own thoughts and your own opinions. You were maybe made to feel stupid or bad at lower education or education in general. With a 3rd house interception, it mostly just feels like things fall on deaf ears, okay? Like for some reason your communication has been halted, and your curiosity has been halted as well. I forgot to say this at the beginning of the video, but I'd really recommend watching the Gemini Sagittarius interception video, because there might be things as a 3rd house, 9th house interception person that you really relate to. There might be things that you don't too. But with intercepted 9th house, this is definitely somebody that I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't go to college or had no real interest in college, or if they have planets in the 9th house but it's intercepted, really wanted to go to college but that wasn't a viable option for you, or had to fully support themselves on their own while going to college, didn't have any backing or any help or support, you know? Or again, is the first person in their family to go to college even. Did not travel much as a kid, did not really explore, you know, you might have had a more sedentary family or household, you didn't go on many vacations, didn't have much fun, didn't try many new risks, also might not have been very politically charged household, might have just been a little bit either indifferent about it all, or everybody just kind of agreed so nobody talked about it, whatever it might be. You might lack opinions or struggle to align yourself politically. You may lack a certain level of passion or optimism. You may get stuck in the 8th house, you know, especially if you have a lot of planets in there. You may struggle to get out of those depressive moods or those depressive feelings. You may struggle to have hope and, as I mentioned, optimism or positivity. Because you're lacking that 9th house, but you probably have a 10th and 11th house, you probably have a job, but you may lack the passion that you have in your job. You know, you may lack that sort of like real raw fighting spirit, like this is what I want to do and this is what I'm meant to do and born to do. It may just feel like something that you do and you get paid for, potentially. You definitely struggle to communicate your philosophies, and when you do, you feel misunderstood, or you feel as though you just aren't as strong, or you might just not care as much about greater philosophies. You may feel like, well, we're just here, so why does it matter why we're here or what we're here doing? We're just here, you know, and it may be a very black and white way of accepting it, you know, which can sometimes be nice, honestly, but sometimes it can feel a little bit like, oh, I don't really have that quest or that curiosity that everybody else has. Again, you might swing from being very non-religious to fervently religious and kind of back and forth and struggle to have a middle barrier. That may be true with your ideals as well. Maybe you have really strong ideals sometimes and you're like so fervent about them and cut everybody off that doesn't feel that way, or you really couldn't give a shit. You don't have any real strong morals or ideals or things of that nature, and you just don't really know why people care so much. Struggling to make bold decisions or risks in your life, and also a disconnection to your in-laws or your extended family, as I've mentioned a few times now. That is my video all about Gemini and Sagittarius intercepted in a birth chart, as well as 3rd house and 9th house intercepted in a birth chart. Let me know your guys' thoughts and your guys' insights in the comments. I have absolutely loved reading your guys' comments on the previous interception videos. It means so much to me, so thank you so much for watching till the end if you got this far. I appreciate your support immensely, so thank you. And I will say right now that don't worry, I will be doing all of the interceptions and all of the intercepted houses, of course, but there is going to be a little bit of a breakup in between the series because it is coming to the end of the year, and I do have a few videos coming for the end of the year that I want to do in a specific time period and time frame. So I will be cutting up the series, but if you see that my next video is not Cancer Capricorn that I post on this channel and it's something else, don't worry. I'm still doing Cancer Capricorn, Leo Aquarius, and Virgo Pisces interception, but it might just not come until 2025, but that would be January of 2025, don't worry. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I appreciate your guys' insights in the comments. I sell birth chart readings on my website, shainaemily.com. I have an astrology TikTok at shaina.emily that I go live every Monday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye!